Hello guys and girls, Board now back with you for another new television review. On this video I will be talking about the new Amazon Prime original series, Lem. So this is the first episode, first of 10 in the first series, which all went up today on Amazon, and it is called Day 1. So I will be going into spoilers from the beginning just to warn you. And the setup for this, it's going to be an anthology series, but it's going to be a different story each season, basically. So this will be one continuing story throughout this opening season. And the idea of it is to look at different periods in American history when it relates to African Americans and some of the torment and terror they've faced over the decades. So this is set in the 1950s. And we have this African American family. You have the mother and father. The mother, Liver, who I think is going to become maybe more the focus of the show, but also the father, Henry. And they move to Compton in California at the start of the episode. And that's because Henry gets a new job at this tech company, which promises to bring in a fair bit of money. And it sort of says in the opening credits where it's got sort of like a messaging on the screen that at this time in America many African American families moved to Compton and to parts of California with these new expanding industries to obviously get their foot in the door, their foot on the ladder, and support their family. There's also an interesting idea of it being set in Compton because, of course, nowadays you think of Compton, straight out Compton, you think of it as a more urban sort of area and successful rap groups have come out of. But obviously, back in the 50s, it was a very different time. This was segregated America and all the rest of it. So the idea is that they're moving into this rich suburban middle class white neighborhood, and from the moment there's this clever sort of term where all the neighbors are speculating about who the house has been sold to and what they're going to be like, and of course they don't expect it to be this black African American family. So you've got wife and husband and couple of children, couple of young girls, and they're moving in. And the idea of the show is the horror they're going to face and the mystery. So you've got obviously the kind of racism they're going to face from their neighbours, but you've also got something potentially supernatural going on in the background and mysteries surrounding their house. So it definitely has a Lovecraft Country feel, and also Us, the horror movie. I got quite strong vibes of that, partly because they had young children and playing on that vibe a bit, and a little bit of Mad Men just because it was this sort of stylized period piece where it sort of also exposed kind of the divide in genders in some ways in that similar period anyway. So that's the basic setup for the opening episode. There's not too much I can reveal beyond that. Generally, I thought it was a good opening episode. I was impressed with the style of it. I was especially impressed with how sort of atmospheric it was and quite sinister. And that starts from the opening, really, because the opening scene is actually like a dream sequence inside Liver's head. And it really throws you for a loop because you have this old woman who comes up to their house. I'm assuming this is meant to be their past house, but this old woman who because they've got a dog and he runs out of the house. And actually, when you see where the episode goes later, it's quite a good setup for the fact that the dog sort of comes running out. But she's making a fuss of the dog, and Liver sort of comes out and starts talking to her, and she starts singing this creepy old song, and it's one of these things that the scene does really well because obviously it's meant to be a playful, innocent song, but just being sung in this way by this sort of creepy woman, it just takes on this whole new life. And I don't know much about the song, to be honest, but I got the impression it may have been like an old-fashioned song, and there was just something about it which was turned into something like sinister and nasty, and the scene sort of escalates, and the woman makes it clear, because she hears that there's a child inside, a young baby, so she actually wants the baby. um, and yeah, things sort of turn quite unsettling and nasty, and then Liver wakes up in the car and they're driving in, and that sort of sets like the whole horror sort of vibe. And I think playing with like sort of innocent things but twisting them around and turning them into something a lot more unsettling. And I think that's definitely the strength of the opening episode, or one of the strengths. I like the characters well enough. Obviously, we don't get to know them that well in this opening episode, but I think the lead characters and the cast do a good job. I quite like, they feel quite natural, they feel like a family. First arriving in the neighbourhood, and they're sort of moving in the house and everything, is that it sort of cuts between their perspective and also the neighbours' perspective. The neighbours, the sort of main one that we sort of see mostly is the Alison Pill character, Betty. Another good actress, and Alison Pill. She's sort of gossiping with like fellow sort of housewives, and I think that there's a term with her character later on in the episode which I do like, and that's basically that she's the one who is kind of the powerhouse in like her marriage sort of thing, and Betty who's really drilling it into her husband and the neighbours. Yeah, we need to do something about this. We can't have them staying in our neighbourhood. And there's this line about what they must have come from. They must have come from something much more horrible, and so they're not going to give up this place easily. So that's what we need to do. We need to make it a lot more horrible here for them to stay, to get them out, basically. So I think that's quite a nice twist with that character. But I think just as they're driving in and stuff, the way it gets in both POVs, because obviously you're meant to be uneasy about like the racism and the reaction to the family, but at the same time, I think it's quite clever the way, obviously from the point of view of this, the white characters, they're obviously horrified by what they're seeing, and obviously there's a sense of unease and being a bit horrified from the point of view of the family as well, the family moving in. The sort of neat little twist, I think, is the fact that Livy and Henry are really quite different characters from the start, because obviously he's moving the family in, and he's positive about this. I've got this great new job, this great new opportunity, and they sort of lay it out that they have moved several times. They've had to move several times because of problems with neighbours and stuff, and so he's trying to sell it to Liver. Then yeah, we need to make this work. We are going to make this work. Because there's even this detail when they're like signing the lease, when they're moving in, that there's no Negroes allowed in the neighbourhood. That's like part of the lease sort of thing. And the woman selling them the house like reassures them that's just one of those things that can be rewritten. We can get around it. Don't worry, it is basically your house. Like, she reassures them, and that's going to be something. I mean, actually, that actress looked familiar, and I did a little looking, and it's sort of funny. She was actually the girl in Silence of the Lambs, the girl who gets kidnapped. And although that's like 30 years ago now, you can definitely see it's her. And she's been in other stuff as well. I've seen her in quite a bit. But yeah, until I looked, I never would have thought that's the girl from Silence of the Lambs. And with like the woman who sold them the house, I mean, is she up to something? Is she sort of, reeling this African American family in for something else? But that could be quite interesting, this sort of reversal of gender roles with Henry and Liver, because, as I said, he's more positive. Says, let's try and make this work. Everything will be fine. And Liver's just on her guard from moment one. She's very paranoid about the neighbours, and she's actually got a gun at one point, and she's like, yeah, calls them sons of bitches to take any crap, basically. If there's any trouble, she's got a gun, that sort of thing. And so I do like that reversal, the fact that Henry's kind of like the grounded one, the cool one, and it's not like the guy being the badass, it's kind of the woman in this case, and I do like that. And I think it's another thing where it does share a certain similarity with Lovecraft Country, where you can see there are going to be some like full-on pulpy elements to this. I don't think it's just going to be this grounded drama and about the suspense and stuff. I think it definitely will go to like the pulpy side at times, and there's a couple scenes in this episode I think that prove that. But I think it's well cast. I was liking the characters. Obviously, until we get further into the episodes and the drama, it's hard to say yet if they're gonna. Because obviously, Lovecraft Country was a special show, I think, not only because it worked as a genre show and what it was doing with the different elements, but I think because you had the really good characters and the acting. There was a lot of depth to the characters as well. It obviously remains to be seen if you'll get the same level of depth in this series. Ambiguous if the neighbours are actually like openly being racist and being a threat. Obviously they're sort of thinking it and stuff, and you get like little comments between them. But it's sort of revealed in the back half that they do intend to get this family out, one way or the other. But I mean, actually, early on, because there's quite a clever scene with where Betty and her friends are out, and it's this scorching hot day, and they're playing like music, and the music, it cuts in and out of focus, and it's quite sort of loud and stuff, and it's sort of, first of all, the fact that Henry goes off to work and she's left here with like her family, and the contrast of them out on this hot day enjoying it, and they're in from the shade sort of thing. They're too afraid to go out and face the light. So it has that sort of thing going on. Just doing this just to mess with their head sort of thing, like playing the music really loud, and they're sort of parked out on the lawn, and sitting there and just watching the house like it's directly in front of, facing the house. Or is it just that they're out enjoying themselves? It's a hot day. Liver comes out, that's it, we're going to face up to this just this once, and they cross past them and go to the bus stop and kind of stand up to like there's a few white kids giving them looks. So that's a good scene. See, one of the mysteries of this, I think, is going to be because certain weird things happen throughout this episode. Like at one point, the young daughter is singing the same song as the woman from Liv's dream, and Livia's like, well, where did you get that from? And it's like, it's from the book I'm reading. And it's like a freaky little scene. It's drawn to the basement, and then later on, sort of the end of the episode is that the girl is basically sees a shadow in the house, and a strange person in a cloak, and that strange person suddenly jumps out at her, and it cuts to the next morning, and she's got a mark on her neck, and the dog has disappeared, and Henry finds the dog dead in the basement. Now, Betty and the rest of them did mention the dog and maybe doing something to the dog. So it's a question of, are they involved in this, or is it something different? Obviously, this could go one or two ways. It could be that the neighbours are being racist and sort of harassing them, but there's also something else going on, something maybe from within the house or something. Or it could just be that the two are connected and that the neighbours are involved in whatever's happening in the house. I think in a way I would like that more, just because there's more possibilities that way. I think there's more you can do with that idea. Times maybe it was a bit too stylized. I think it was at times with some of the use of music, they were going a bit heavy with it and maybe a bit on the nose going on with. And again, I guess this was to make it really cinematic, but you had like big, like the title of the show, for example, big letters on the screen and stuff like that. And at times that just felt maybe, been here, done that before. And there's certain cues with the music. And I think the only other thing is that because at the moment it does feel very similar to Lovecraft Country, and it's probably only in my mind because Lovecraft Country only came out last year, and maybe because that's such a good show, then if this can't live up to that, which very hard to see because that was exceptional, but if this sort of comes off as an inferior version of that, then I think that could work against it. But yeah, I mean, I can't really say too much bad of it. These are minor complaints, really. I thought it was a strong first episode, but I wouldn't say it totally knocked it out of the park, but I thought it was strong, and I definitely want to see more. It definitely appeals to a lot of my taste. So that's episode 1 of them, which is on Amazon Prime, and obviously I'll continue on with it. So I'll try and do these every couple of days. So I should be back in a couple of days with my thoughts on episode 2 and see how it goes. Let me know how you thought, or what you thought of this opening episode in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and I'll be back with more TV reviews soon. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.